A waitress helped a nervous boy order food. 20 years later, that teen came back as a billionaire. The rain pounded against the windows of Ruby's diner, transforming the small-town restaurant into a haven of warmth and comfort on that dreary Tuesday afternoon. The neon sign flickered occasionally, casting a reddish glow that mixed with the gray of the stormy day. Inside, the usual lunch rush had dwindled to a handful of regulars, nursing coffees and picking at the remains of their meals. Emily Parker wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that day. At 23, she'd been working at Ruby's for nearly 5 years. Not exactly the dream she'd had when she graduated high school, but the tips were decent enough, and the regulars treated her like family. Her honey blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and though her uniform had seen better days, she wore it with a certain dignity that couldn't be diminished by the coffee stains or the slight fray at the hem. The bell above the door jingled, and Emily looked up expecting to see Mr. Thompson, who always came in for a late lunch on Tuesdays. Instead, she saw a boy, maybe 15 or 16, hovering uncertainly at the entrance. He was soaked from the rain, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, thin shoulders hunched as if trying to make himself invisible. Something about his expression made Emily's heart twist a little. "Take a seat anywhere, honey," she called out, reaching for a menu. "I'll be right with you." The boy flinched slightly at being addressed, then nodded and made his way to a booth in the corner, as far from the other patrons as possible. Emily watched as he settled in, noticing how he kept his eyes down, his movements awkward and uncertain. As she approached his table, she could see his hands trembling as he tried to open the menu. "First time at Ruby's?" she asked gently, placing a glass of water in front of him. He nodded, still not meeting her eyes. "Well, you picked a good day to come in. Chef said loaf is actually edible today," she said with a wink, hoping to ease his obvious discomfort. The boy glanced up briefly, the ghost of a smile flickering across his face before disappearing. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His face flushed with embarrassment as he tried again. "Take your time," Emily said, deliberately introducing a stutter into her own speech. I sometimes trip over my words too. Especially when I'm hungry." The simple acknowledgement seemed to release some of the tension in the boy's shoulders. He took a deep breath and pointed to the menu. "See? Can I have a cheeseburger?" he finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Excellent choice," Emily said warmly, as if he'd just recited Shakespeare. "Fries with that?" He nodded. "And to drink? We've got some pretty amazing chocolate milkshakes if you're interested." Another nod, more enthusiastic this time. "You got it. 1 cheeseburger, fries and a chocolate shake coming right up." She took the menu from him, noticing how his hands had finally stopped shaking. "I'm Emily, by the way. If you need anything else, just wave." As she turned to place his order, she caught sight of him pulling out his wallet and discreetly checking its contents. The look of panic that crossed his face told her everything she needed to know. He was counting change, not bills. Emily placed his order with Hector, the cook, then glanced back at the boy. He was now staring at the exit, clearly contemplating a hasty retreat. Making a quick decision, she grabbed a pen and a napkin. "Everything okay, Em?" asked Doris, another waitress who had been watching the interaction. "Yeah, just that kid over there. I think he's having a rough day." Doris looked over, her expression softening. "Poor thing looks like a stray cat in a thunderstorm. I'm going to cover his meal," Emily said, already pulling out her tip money from her apron pocket. "Frank will have a fit if he catches you," Doris warned, referring to their notoriously strict manager who was currently doing inventory in the back office. "Then he won't catch me," Emily replied with determination. When the food was ready, Emily brought it to the boy's table, setting down the plate and the tall, frosty milkshake with a flourish. His eyes widened at the sight, and for the first time she saw a genuine smile break through his nervousness. "Enjoy," she said, then hesitated before adding, "Don't worry about the bill today. It's on me." Panic immediately replaced his smile. No, I can't." "Hey," Emily said softly, sitting down across from him for a moment. "Everyone needs a little help sometimes. I've been where you are. Someone helped me once when I really needed it. I'm just paying it forward." He looked at her with such raw gratitude that Emily had to blink back unexpected tears. She slid the napkin she'd written on across the table to him, The world is kinder than it seems. Come back stronger." The boy read the note, then looked up at her with eyes that were suddenly too bright. He nodded once, a solemn promise. "Now eat up before those fries get cold," she said with a wink, standing to give him privacy as his eyes welled up. Throughout his meal, Emily made sure to check on him but gave him space, treating him with the perfect balance of attention and respect for his obvious shyness. When he finished, he stood up, leaving the empty plates neatly stacked. As he passed the counter on his way out, he paused. "Thank you," he said, his voice a little stronger this time. "I won't forget this." Emily smiled. "Take care of yourself out there." The bell jingled again as he left, disappearing into the rain that had now lightened to a gentle drizzle. Emily watched him go, feeling that peculiar mixture of sadness and hope that sometimes comes from brief encounters with strangers. She had no way of knowing that those few minutes of kindness would alter the course of not just his life but hers as well. She was still watching the door when Frank emerged from the back office, his perpetual scowl deepening as he surveyed the half-empty diner. "Parker, stop daydreaming and get table 4's order," he barked. Emily turned away from the window, tucking the memory of the nervous boy into a corner of her heart as she returned to the rhythm of her everyday life. Some part of her wondered if she would ever see him again, though she doubted it. Small acts of kindness rarely came with return addresses. What she didn't see was the boy standing across the street, looking back at the diner with an expression of newfound determination on his face. In his pocket, he carefully folded the napkin with her message, a talisman against the darkness that had nearly overwhelmed him that day. He whispered a promise to himself and to the kind waitress who had seen his worth when he couldn't see it himself. "I will come back stronger." The rain stopped completely as he walked away, the sun breaking through the clouds in a single brilliant shaft of light that fell across his path like an omen of better days to come. The evening shift dragged on after the boy left. Emily served the usual dinner crowd with her customary smile, though her mind occasionally drifted back to the teenager with the stuttering voice. Something about his vulnerability had touched her deeply, perhaps because she recognized parts of her younger self in his struggle. As the last customer paid their bill, Emily began her closing duties, wiping down tables and refilling condiment bottles. The rain had returned, beating a steady rhythm against the windows. She hummed softly to herself, calculating how much of her paycheck could go toward the overdue electric bill this month. "Parker, my office, now." Frank's voice cut through her thoughts like a knife. Something in his tone made her stomach drop. She set down her cleaning rag and made her way to the cramped back office where Frank sat behind a desk, cluttered with invoices and scheduling sheets. His face was set in hard lines, eyes cold. "Close the door," he ordered. Emily complied, her heart beginning to race. "Is something wrong? Doris tells me you gave away food today, free of charge." He leaned forward, tapping a pencil against the desk. "Care to explain?" Emily's cheeks flushed. "It was just one meal, Frank. The kid was having a rough time." "I don't pay you to be a charity," Frank cut in. "Ruby's isn't a soup kitchen." "I paid for it myself," Emily protested. "From my tips, it didn't cost the diner a cent." Frank's expression didn't soften. "That's not the point. Rules are rules. No free meals. Period." He pulled out a form from his desk drawer, already filled out. "I've had complaints about you before. Too chatty with customers. Taking too long on breaks." Emily stared at him in disbelief. "Those aren't complaints, Frank. That's just me being human with people. It's bad for business," he insisted. "And now this." He slid the form across the desk. "I'm letting you go." The words hit Emily like a physical blow. "You're firing me? Over a cheeseburger?" "Over repeated violations of policy," Frank corrected, his voice devoid of empathy. "Your final check will be mailed. Turn in your apron before you leave." Emily stood frozen, the unfairness of it all rendering her momentarily speechless. 5 years of loyal service, never once calling in sick, always covering other people's shifts when needed. All erased because she'd shown kindness to a struggling kid. "Who complained?" she finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Frank glanced toward the dining area. "Margaret saw you sit down with him," said it looked unprofessional. Margaret, the woman who always ordered the house salad with dressing on the side and sent it back at least once every visit. Of course it would be her. With trembling hands, Emily untied her apron and placed it on the desk. "I don't regret helping that boy," she said firmly, finding strength in the conviction of her actions. "Not for a second," Frank shrugged. "Noble sentiment. Doesn't pay bills though, does it?" Outside the office, Doris waited, her face etched with concern. "I heard," she whispered, pulling Emily into a quick hug. "It's not right." "Life rarely is," Emily replied, forcing a smile she didn't feel. She gathered her few belongings from her locker, said quiet goodbyes to the kitchen staff, and stepped out into the rain without an umbrella. The cold drops mingled with the tears she could no longer hold back. Back in her tiny apartment, Emily sat at her kitchen table, staring at the pile of bills. Without rubies, she wouldn't make rent next month. Her savings would barely cover groceries for a few weeks. The small town offered limited employment options, especially for someone without a college degree. As morning light filtered through her worn curtains, Emily made a decision. There was nothing left for her here. Her parents had moved to Florida years ago, their relationship strained by distance and misunderstanding. No siblings, few close friends outside work. It took just 3 days to pack her life into her beat-up Honda. The landlord was surprisingly sympathetic when she explained the situation, even returning half of her security deposit, a kindness she hadn't expected and desperately needed. As Emily drove past Ruby's diner one last time, she caught sight of a help-wanted sign already in the window. Life moved on quickly, leaving no space for sentimentality. She thought briefly of the boy, hoping he was doing better, that her small gesture had made some difference. The highway stretched before her, leading to an uncertain future in a city where nobody knew her name. She had exactly $133 in her checking account, a tank of gas, and no clear plan beyond finding work, any work that would keep a roof over her head. But despite everything, as the town disappeared in her rearview mirror, Emily found herself smiling through her tears. Frank was wrong about one thing. Her kindness might have cost her a job, but it had given her something more valuable. The knowledge that even in her darkest moment, she had chosen compassion over convenience. "No regrets," she whispered to herself as she crossed the county line, leaving behind the only home she'd ever known. No regrets at all. 20 years later, Liam Reed stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. The Seattle skyline spread before him like a glittering chessboard. At 35, he'd achieved what most would consider impossible, founding and building VoiceBox Technologies into a multi-billion-dollar company that had revolutionized communication tools for those with speech difficulties. "The quarterly reports are ready for your review, Mr. Reed," his assistant said, placing a tablet on his desk. Liam nodded, his eyes still fixed on the city below. "Thank you, Sarah." The office door closed softly, leaving him alone with thoughts that had been haunting him for weeks. Next month would mark the 20th anniversary of the day that had changed everything. A rainy afternoon in a small-town diner when he'd been at his lowest point. He pulled open his desk drawer and carefully removed a framed, faded napkin. "The world is kinder than it seems. Come back stronger." The handwriting had faded slightly over the years, but the impact of those words remained as powerful as ever. That day at Ruby's diner, Liam had been planning to end his life. After years of relentless bullying for his stutter, the final straw had been his humiliation during a class presentation. He'd walked into that diner with nothing but loose change in his pocket and despair in his heart. But then there was Emily, the waitress, who'd seen his struggle and responded not with pity but with genuine kindness. Her small act of compassion had quite literally saved his life. The memory propelled him through his darkest days. Through speech therapy sessions that seemed endless. Through nights spent coding while his college roommates partied. Through the rejection of his first 7 investor pitches. He'd kept the napkin with him through everything, a talisman that reminded him of a promise, to come back stronger. And he had. VoiceBox's speech assistance apps had helped millions of people with communication disorders. Their newest AI platform, designed specifically for children, was being hailed as revolutionary. Liam picked up the phone. "Sarah, can you ask Marcus to come up, please?" Minutes later, Marcus Chen, his VP of Operations and oldest friend, entered the office. "You're brooding again," Marcus observed, dropping into a chair opposite Liam's desk. Liam smiled slightly. "I'm thinking about her again." Marcus nodded, familiar with this conversation. "The napkin lady." "Emily," Liam corrected. Her name was Emily. You know, most billionaires have slightly more exciting origin stories, Marcus teased. Usually involving garages and venture capital, not diner napkins. Liam turned from the window, his expression serious. I want to find her. Marcus raised an eyebrow. After 20 years? That's like finding a specific snowflake in an avalanche. We have resources now, Liam insisted. It's time I thanked her properly. Marcus studied his friend's face, recognizing the determined set of his jaw. You're serious about this? I am. Liam handed him the framed napkin. Everything we've built, this company, the foundation, all of it, began with this moment. With her. Marcus sighed, knowing better than to argue when Liam had made up his mind. I'll reach out to some contacts. But Liam, you need to prepare yourself. 20 years is a long time. She might not be. I know, Liam said quietly. But I have to try. The following week, Liam found himself back in his hometown, driving a rental car down Main Street that had changed yet remained eerily familiar. When he reached the spot where Ruby's diner had stood, he felt a pang of disappointment, but not surprise. The diner was gone, replaced by a generic chain restaurant with bright signage and a drive-through lane. Inside, none of the staff recognized the name Emily Parker. The manager, a harried-looking woman in her 40s, shook her head apologetically. This place has changed hands 3 times in the last decade. Most of the original Ruby's employees moved on long ago. Liam thanked her and returned to his hotel, undeterred. The next morning, he met with a private investigator, who specialized in finding people, an older gentleman with shrewd eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. What exactly do you know about this woman? The investigator asked, notepad ready. Her first name. Where she worked 20 years ago, that she was in her early 20s then. Liam knew how thin this sounded. The investigator didn't flinch. I've found people with less. Why is finding her so important to you, Mr. Reed? Liam hesitated, then spoke with quiet conviction. Because I want her to know that kindness matters. That her kindness mattered. As he left the PI's office, Liam felt a strange mixture of hope and anxiety. Finding Emily had become suddenly overwhelmingly important, a mission that felt like the closing of a circle that had been open for far too long. I'm coming back, he whispered to himself, echoing the promise he'd made 2 decades earlier. I'm coming back stronger. And this time, I'll be the one to help you. 3 months passed with agonizing slowness. Liam divided his time between Seattle and his childhood hometown, working remotely while the private investigator Gerald Mason followed what seemed like an endless trail of dead ends. We've got something, Gerald announced during their weekly update call. Employment records from Ruby's diner show an Emily Parker worked there for 5 years. Left abruptly 20 years ago. Liam's heart raced. That's her. Did you find where she went? Not directly, Gerald admitted, but I tracked down a former coworker, Doris Williams. Still lives in town. She might know more. The next day Liam sat in Doris's modest living room, perched on a floral couch surrounded by family photos and knickknacks. Now in her 70s, Doris studied him with curious eyes. So you're the boy, she said finally. Recognition dawning on her face. The one with the burger and shake. Liam nodded, surprised. You remember that? Hard to forget. It was the day Emily lost her job. Doris sighed, her weathered hands folding in her lap. Frank fired her that same night, all because she showed you a little kindness. The revelation hit Liam like a physical blow. She was fired? Because of me? Because of Frank being a heartless penny pincher, Doris corrected firmly. Not your fault, young man. But yes, she left town soon after. Had no choice really. Jobs were scarce and Frank made sure she wouldn't get hired at any other restaurant in the area. Guilt and determination battled within Liam. Do you know where she went? She mentioned Indianapolis. Had a cousin there, I think. Doris reached for an old address book. We exchanged Christmas cards for a few years, but lost touch maybe 15 years back. Last I heard, she'd gotten married, armed with a married name, Emily Winters, and a last known city. Gerald's search narrowed. 2 weeks later, Liam found himself standing outside a modest apartment building in a working-class neighborhood of Detroit, gathering his courage. Apartment 3B. The nameplate read, E. Winters. Liam took a deep breath and knocked. The door opened to reveal a woman in her early 40s. Time had changed her lines around her eyes, hair cut shorter and streaked with early gray, but Liam recognized the same kind eyes that had seen him at his most vulnerable. "Emily Parker?" he asked, his voice steady. A hard-won victory after years of speech therapy. She looked confused, wary. "It's Winters now, but yes. Do I know you?" "You probably don't remember me," Liam began, suddenly feeling like that nervous teenager again. "But 20 years ago, you served me at Ruby's diner. I was having a really bad day." Emily's expression remained blank. "You paid for my meal," he continued. "Left me a note on a napkin." A flicker of memory crossed her face, but no recognition of him specifically. "I'm sorry." Liam reached into his pocket and carefully unfolded a photograph of the framed napkin. "The world is kinder than it seems. Come back stronger." Emily's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It's you, the boy with the stutter." "Liam," he supplied, smiling. "Liam Reed." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. "You kept it? All these years?" "It saved my life," he said simply. "Literally." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of keys in the lock. A teenage girl with Emily's eyes and a determined set to her jaw pushed through the door, dropping her backpack in the entryway. "Mom, the washing machine in the basement is broken again, and I need my—" She stopped short, noticing Liam. "Sorry, I didn't know you had company." "Lily, this is an old friend," Emily said, her voice unsteady. "Liam Reed." Recognition flashed across Lily's face. "Wait, Liam Reed? Like the voicebox guy? The billionaire?" Emily looked at Liam with new eyes. Confusion evident. "Billionaire?" Liam nodded, suddenly self-conscious. "I should have mentioned that part." Over coffee at their small kitchen table, Liam told Emily everything, how close he'd been to ending his life that day, how her kindness had given him the strength to keep going, how her simple note had become his mantra through every challenge. "I built VoiceBox because of my stutter," he explained, "to help kids like me communicate without fear." Emily listened, occasionally wiping away tears. As their conversation continued, Liam learned about her life, the abrupt move after being fired, the struggle to rebuild, a marriage that had started promisingly but ended in divorce, leaving her to raise Lily alone. "2 jobs, Lily interjected proudly. "Mom works 2 jobs so I can take dance classes and save for college." Emily hushed her daughter, embarrassed. "We managed just fine." But Liam saw the truth in the apartment's worn furniture, the carefully mended curtains, the stack of bills partially hidden under a cookbook. Emily had spent 20 years struggling, all because of one act of kindness she'd shown to a desperate boy. "I've been looking for you for months," Liam admitted. "I wanted to thank you properly." "You already have," Emily assured him. "Just knowing you're okay, that you've built such an amazing life. That's thanks enough." But Liam shook his head, determination setting his features. "I don't think so. I think we're just getting started." 2 days later, Emily found herself seated across from Liam at a sunlit cafe, unlike any restaurant she'd ever visited. The space was bright and airy, with plants hanging from the ceiling and motivational quotes painted on exposed brick walls. Young employees moved about with purpose, many wearing earpieces or devices that Emily realized must be VoiceBox products. "This is one of our company wellness cafes," Liam explained, noticing her curious gaze. "We have them at all our major offices." "It's beautiful," Emily said, still feeling somewhat out of place in her best blouse, a 3-year-old garment she reserved for special occasions. Lily sat beside her, trying and failing to hide her excitement. "So this is where tech billionaires eat lunch?" Lily whispered, snapping a discreet photo with her phone. Emily gave her daughter a gentle nudge. "Lily, manners." Liam laughed. "It's fine. And technically this is where their employees eat lunch. I usually grab a protein bar at my desk." Their food arrived, artisanal sandwiches, and fresh pressed juices that made Emily's cafeteria lunch shift meals seem like processed cardboard by comparison. As they ate, Liam shared stories about building VoiceBox, his eyes lighting up when describing how their technology had helped children overcome communication barriers. "Our foundation gives away the software to schools and families who can't afford it," he explained. "Last year we reached over 50,000 kids." Emily listened, genuinely moved by his passion. "You've built something amazing, Liam." I'm so proud of you, though I have no right to be. You have every right, Liam insisted. More than anyone. After lunch, he led them to a private meeting room with comfortable couches and a view of the city. Once they were settled, his expression turned serious. Emily, I've been thinking about what happened, about how my life took off because of your kindness, while yours, he hesitated. While mine what? Emily asked, suddenly defensive. I may not be wealthy, Liam, but I've built a good life. Lily is the best thing that ever happened to me. Of course, I didn't mean. Liam backtracked. It's just that I know things haven't been easy, and I know it's because of what happened that day at Ruby's. Emily softened. That wasn't your fault. Maybe not, but I still want to make it right. Liam leaned forward. I'd like to offer you a choice, 3 options, actually. He opened a folder and laid 3 documents on the coffee table between them. First option, a full scholarship fund for Lily. Any college, any program, plus living expenses. No loans, no debt. Lily gasped, grabbing her mother's arm. Emily's eyes widened, but before she could respond, Liam continued. Second option, a position with the Voicebox Foundation as our first compassion ambassador. You'd work with schools and families, sharing your perspective on how small acts of kindness can change lives. The salary is substantial, with full benefits. Emily stared at the papers, speechless. And third option, Liam said, pushing forward the final document, co-ownership of a new restaurant. I've purchased the building where Ruby's used to be. It needs renovation, but it could be yours, run however you choose. The silence stretched as Emily tried to process what she was hearing. Liam, it's too much. I can't accept any of this. Why not? Because I don't deserve it. The words burst from her with unexpected force. I just did what any decent person would do. That's exactly why you deserve it, Liam countered gently. Because when it mattered, you were the only decent person in my life. Lily squeezed her mother's hand. Mom, this is insane. Do you know what this means for us? Emily looked at her daughter. Brilliant, determined Lily, who'd never complained about second-hand clothes or missed school trips because money was tight. Who'd never known what it was like not to worry about bills. I still don't understand why, Emily whispered. 20 years is a long time to remember a small kindness. Liam's expression grew solemn. That day I came into Ruby's, I was planning to finish myself. The brutal honesty of his words hung in the air. I had it all planned out, he continued quietly. But then there was you, someone who saw me struggling and didn't look away, who showed me dignity when I felt worthless. His voice cracked slightly. How do you repay someone for saving your life? Tears streamed down Emily's face now. I had no idea. Of course you didn't. But that's what real kindness is, isn't it? Helping without knowing the full story. Liam pushed the papers toward her again. Please, let me do this for you. Emily looked from the papers to her daughter's hopeful face, then back to Liam. A lifetime of putting others first made accepting such generosity nearly impossible. But the earnest determination in Liam's eyes told her that refusing would hurt him more than the financial cost could ever affect him. I need to think about this. She finally managed. Take all the time you need, Liam replied. But promise me you'll seriously consider saying yes to one of them. As they left the cafe, Lily couldn't contain her excitement, chattering about possibilities that had never before seemed within reach. But Emily remained quiet, overwhelmed by choices she never expected to have, and by the realization that sometimes kindness did find its way back home. 1 year later, the bell above the door jingled as Emily wiped down the counter of Parker's Place, a sound that still brought a smile to her face. The morning rush had just ended, leaving the diner in that peaceful lull before the lunch crowd arrived. More coffee, Mrs. Winters? Asked Jamal, a 19-year-old college student, who'd never waited tables before Emily hired him 6 months ago. Please, she replied, pushing her mug toward him. And remember, it's just Emily. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, illuminating a space that paid homage to Ruby's diner, while being entirely its own. The classic chrome and red vinyl had been updated with warm woods and softer lighting. Photos of the town's history lined one wall, while another featured framed stories of the diner's new employees, each one containing their own journey of struggle and redemption. Emily had chosen the third option, the diner, though not for the reasons Liam initially assumed. After a week of sleepless nights and long talks with Lily, she'd made her decision. "I want something that can help more than just us," she'd told Liam. "Something that can pay it forward." Parker's Place became that vision. Emily hired people others wouldn't take a chance on. Ex-convicts trying to rebuild their lives, recovering addicts, single parents needing flexible schedules, teenagers from troubled homes. She offered fair wages, free meals during shifts, and something many of them had never experienced: unconditional respect. The door jingled again, and Emily looked up to see Liam entering, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater rather than his usual business attire. "The prodigal billionaire returns," she teased, coming around the counter to give him a hug. "Just passing through on my way to Chicago," he explained, settling onto what had become his stool at the counter. "Thought I'd check on my investment." "Your investment is doing just fine," Emily said, pouring him coffee without asking. "We're actually turning a profit this quarter." "I never doubted it." His eyes crinkled with genuine pride. "How's Lily enjoying Northwestern?" "Thriving. She's already talking about grad school." Emily shook her head in wonder. "Sometimes I still can't believe it." Though Emily had chosen the diner, Liam had insisted on the scholarship for Lily as well, a package deal he'd called it, refusing to negotiate. Their conversation was interrupted when the kitchen doors swung open, and Tony, the head cook who'd spent 10 years in prison before Emily hired him, emerged with a plate. "New recipe I'm working on," he announced, placing a beautifully plated sandwich before Liam. "Tell me what you think." As Liam sampled the food, Emily glanced around her diner with quiet satisfaction. The place had become something of a local legend after a food blogger wrote about the waitress who fed a future billionaire. The story had gone viral, bringing curious customers from surrounding states. Emily had rejected most interview requests, uncomfortable with the attention. But she'd agreed to one television appearance, on a show focusing on second chances, because it highlighted her staff's stories rather than her own. "You've created something special here," Liam observed, following her gaze. "More important than anything I've built." Emily smiled, recognizing the echo of their ongoing friendly debate. "We're even," she said. "You help kids find their voice. I help people find their worth." The afternoon progressed with the comfortable rhythm that had developed between them over the past year. They weren't romantic, their connection was something different, deeper in some ways. "Kindred spirits," Liam had called them once. "Soul siblings," Emily thought privately. As closing time approached, Emily noticed a teenage girl hovering near the entrance, her posture radiating anxiety. Something in the girl's hesitation struck a familiar chord. "I'll be right back," Emily told Liam, who nodded knowingly. The girl flinched when Emily approached, eyes darting toward the exit. "First time at Parker's?" Emily asked gently. A wordless nod. "Well, you picked a good day to come in. Our chef just perfected his new turkey avocado sandwich." The girl's eyes remained downcast. I don't think I can afford." "Tell you what," Emily interrupted softly. "First meals on the house, a Parker's Place tradition." Finally the girl looked up, surprise and suspicion warring on her face. "Why would you do that?" Emily smiled, her heart recognizing the moment for what it was, a perfect circle, closing. "Because someone did it for me once, and because sometimes, we all need reminding that the world is kinder than it seems." From his seat at the counter, Liam watched the interaction, a lump forming in his throat as he witnessed history repeating itself in the most beautiful way. As Emily guided the nervous girl to a table, wrote something on a napkin, and placed it before her with a gentle smile, Liam realized that this moment of grace passing from one generation to the next was the true return on his investment, and it was priceless.